Our next presentation is from Nick Hardcastle, presenting on the development of the Peter MacCallum Cancer Center Varian Clinical School and Motion Management.
Yeah, thank you. And for the opportunity to talk and present on behalf of the group here at Peter Mac, who've put together this clinical school. And this is a collection of authors from medical physics, radiation oncology, and radiation therapy. And just to preface this with, when I say radiation therapists in Australia, that means they're radiation therapists who treat patients as well as dosimetrists. They're dual trained. Let's bring up my laser pointer. Okay, the main disclosure associated with this work is that we are running this as a Varian clinical school, which means that we provide the content and the speakers and have full control over that. And Varian pay us to run that, and they offer that as part of their training course catalogue. Okay, so respiratory motion management in radiation therapy is not new. We've been doing it for a very long time. The most common, as we'll see in the next couple of slides, is that we just measure the motion and stick a margin on it to account for the motion of the tumour. But we know in a number of tumour sites that advanced motion management is where we actively try and reduce the respiratory motion magnitude, or we do things like gating or tracking to account for that motion in a more intelligent way, can improve patient outcomes in a number of subsites. Whether you're doing sticking a margin on things, so typically an internal target volume or mid-ventilation, mid-position, or doing something more advanced, you do need to do it properly, because the quality of your motion management will also impact outcomes. In our region being Australia and New Zealand, we performed a survey a couple of years ago in the context of generating a dosimetry audit associated with motion management. And this gave us probably our best level of information in our region on what people are actually using in terms of standard motion management and advanced motion management. If we look at SABRE or SBRT, we see people are typically using large margins. But there's sort of only 25% or so of people using breath hold, and even less doing free breathing gating. Free breathing gating at the time was really only associated with the Varian Linacs. Wasn't achievable in the Elector Linacs at the time. And if we look at conventional radiotherapy, these numbers drop down a bit. And so we do see a lack of uptake in advanced motion management in a number of sites that would probably benefit from it. And this is mainly the upper abdomen, and such as liver and pancreas, and some challenging lung cases. Tumour tracking isn't well represented in Australia because we only have a couple of cyberknives. In this survey, we did look at barriers to using more advanced respiratory motion management, and one of the biggest barriers was staffing resource limitations. People didn't have the appropriate staff to do this, as well as the number of staff to do it, because it is a bit more time consuming. And these are some more comments associated with additional barriers. These are independent results, so that's why there's a bit of repetition, but training and clinical decision making was highlighted as one of the major barriers, in addition to what we've got listed here. So as a result, we've worked with Varian medical systems in Australia locally to put together a motion management clinical school. As I mentioned before, this is part of Varian's training catalogue, and the content is controlled by Peter Mac. And the target audience is radiation oncologists, radiation therapists, and medical physicists from centres who have Varian Linacs. And I think that's probably a key point here, that a lot of the motion management, as I mentioned before, for example, respiratory gating, is linked to the vendor that you've got. And so it does need to have some sort of vendor specificity. We try and make it as vendor agnostic elsewhere as possible. But for example, the sessions where we're sitting on a linear accelerator and doing stuff and showing the tools and how to use them kind of does need to be vendor specific. This is advertised to the Varian APAC, Asia-Pacific training and customer teams, and it really should be available to about 65% of the Australia and New Zealand market. So that's the footprint of Varian Linacs. So the lecture content is delivered by a radiation oncologist. I'll just hit allow, hopefully it doesn't stop up your audio there. It's delivered by a radiation oncologist who give clinical background on thorax, upper abdomen, and some prostate. So what tumor motion characteristics we have and clinical benefits of motion management in that region. And so prostate obviously isn't respiratory motion management, but we do have some advanced tools such as triggered imaging and tracking that we use. Apologies if you can hear my needy dog in the background. We then have some content delivered by the medical physicist, and this is going through different respiratory motion management options and how to pick them for your individual patient, simulation imaging, image registration, and then we cover uncertainties and commissioning and quality assurance. And then radiation therapists deliver content on IGRT, and this is volumetric and non-volumetric, treatment planning considerations, and we go through some case discussions at the end of the day to make sure everybody's still awake and get everyone engaged towards the end of the day. So the key here is it's multidisciplinary delivery and covering all components of the treatment chain. The second day is practical content, where we split the group into two, and this puts a hard limit on the number of participants we can have at each course. We have a maximum of 12 participants because we do have a limited space in the control rooms. So we have half people come to the LINAC, where we go through how to use the LINAC and fluoroscopy for motion management assessment and figuring out which motion management might be best for your patient. Then they go to the CT scanner and essentially do a bunch of 4D CT scans. And we also cover a bit of contrast in there as well. We have a break for lunch, and then we have back to the LINAC for motion management treatment, and this is looking at all the IGRT components and then doing breath hold and gating treatments, and then some treatment planning and image registration stuff at the end. When we're on the LINAC and CT, we've got a couple of SIRS motion phantoms running. So essentially, this is a time for all of these staff members to get together, which is pretty hard to come by in their own clinic, and just sit there and play with the tools with a simulation respiratory motion, simulation patient respiratory motion. So people can get their hands dirty and just have that time to play around with different things, which I think is one of the benefits. We do a survey, Likert scale on each of the lectures and content, and provide comments and receive comments. And this is practical content too, and people aren't allowed to leave the course unless they've filled this out. So we have 100% success rate. So we've run the workshop 4 times, so 3 times last year and once so far this year. We've had 27 participants from Australia and 4 from New Zealand. And this is representing about 10% of centres in Australia. We've had 5 repeat customers, which is good. So centres have sent more staff to the course. And we've also covered 7 regional and rural centres, which is quite important in Australia because we've got quite a geographically spread out population. And mostly radiation therapists and some physicists, and no radiation oncologists so far. Participant feedback has been very positive. So mostly 3 to 5 in terms of 5 being very, very useful, 0 being not that useful. Where we've got lower scores, such as these 2s here, this is usually associated with comments saying, I'm a radiation therapist, I didn't find the commissioning and QA particularly useful. So that's fair enough, but we do need to cater for all the audience. We also have a couple of lower scores for image registration, where I think people were sort of indicating that it might have been a bit too basic a level, because we do cover some basics of image registration too, how that works in the motion management context. The comments are overwhelmingly quite positive. The main thing that we're negative comment is that day 1, which is full of lectures, is very long, and be good to split up the lecture and practical, but unfortunately it's a bit challenging with the use of the LINAC. We've also been able to roll this out through our local learning hub, which is all of the lecture content on video, and then we do a roadshow where we drive around to our different campuses at Peter Mac and do the practical components. So just to finish off, we do aim to arm practitioners in Australia and New Zealand with the tools to fully utilise motion management, advanced motion management on the Varian LINACs. We do 3 a year, and we're continuing that this year. and hopefully this results in more widespread and equitable access to advanced radiation therapy techniques for our patients. Thanks.